The morning sun cast long shadows across the military training ground as Sarah Martinez sat on a wooden bench outside the barracks. Her rifle lay across her lap, the metal still warm from the morning exercises. She had always been meticulous about maintaining her equipment, a habit drilled into her since her first day of basic training 3 years ago. Sarah pulled out her cleaning kit and began the familiar routine: strip, clean, oil, reassemble. The repetitive motions were almost meditative, allowing her mind to wander as her hands worked automatically. She thought about the letter she had received from her younger brother Miguel the day before. He was struggling in college, questioning whether he should drop out to help support their family back in Texas. As she worked, Sarah was completely unaware that General Patricia Williams was approaching from across the compound. The general had been making her rounds, observing the soldiers during their downtime, getting a sense of their discipline and dedication when they thought no one was watching. This was how she truly measured the quality of her troops. Sarah's sleeve had rolled up slightly as she worked, revealing a small tattoo on her forearm. It was barely visible, just a simple design that most people would overlook entirely. But General Williams had sharp eyes, trained to notice details that others missed. As she drew closer, something about that particular emblem made her pause mid-stride. The tattoo was small and appeared to be just decorative to the casual observer. It consisted of intertwining lines forming a pattern that looked almost Celtic in nature, with what appeared to be a small bird in the center. Sarah had gotten it years ago, long before she enlisted, and rarely thought about it anymore. To her, it was just a reminder of a different time in her life. General Williams felt her breath catch slightly as recognition dawned. That symbol was not something she had seen in many years, but it was unmistakable once you knew what to look for. The intertwining pattern represented something far more significant than simple decoration. It was a symbol that connected to a story of courage, sacrifice, and family honor that stretched back generations. Sarah continued cleaning her rifle, running the cloth along the barrel with practiced precision. She hummed quietly to herself, an old song her grandmother used to sing while cooking in their small kitchen in San Antonio. The melody drifted across the quiet morning air, barely audible but somehow adding to the peaceful atmosphere of the training ground. The general's mind raced as she tried to process what she was seeing. Could it really be possible? After all these years, could she have stumbled upon this connection purely by chance? She had to be certain before she said anything. Too much depended on being absolutely sure. Moving closer with the measured pace of someone who had spent decades in military service, General Williams positioned herself where she could get a better view without appearing to intrude. Sarah was so focused on her task that she remained completely oblivious to the scrutiny. The rifle was an older model, one that required more maintenance than the newer versions, but Sarah preferred it. She liked the weight, the balance, the way it felt solid and dependable in her hands. Her accuracy scores were consistently among the highest in her unit, something that had earned her respect from her fellow soldiers and attention from her commanding officers. As she worked, Sarah's mind drifted to thoughts of her family. Her parents had immigrated to the United States when she was just 5 years old, carrying with them stories of their homeland and the struggles their families had endured. They had worked multiple jobs to provide for Sarah and her siblings, always emphasizing the importance of education and service to others. The decision to join the military had not been an easy one for Sarah. Her parents had wanted her to focus on college, to pursue a career that would provide stability and financial security. But Sarah felt called to serve, to give back to the country that had given her family so many opportunities. She enlisted the day after her 18th birthday, despite her parents' concerns. General Williams continued to observe, her military bearing masking the emotional turmoil building inside her. The symbol on Sarah's arm was bringing back memories she had carefully buried for decades. Memories of her own youth, of promises made and sacrifices endured, of a family connection that had been lost to time and circumstance. The sound of other soldiers beginning their morning routines filled the air around them. Voices called out greetings, equipment clanked as it was moved and organized, and the steady rhythm of boots on pavement created the familiar soundtrack of military life. But in the small bubble where Sarah worked and General Williams watched, time seemed suspended. Sarah finished cleaning the barrel and moved on to the trigger mechanism, her movements efficient and practiced. She had learned early in her military career that taking care of your equipment was not just about following orders or maintaining standards. Your equipment could be the difference between life and death, between mission success and failure. This understanding had made her one of the most reliable soldiers in her unit. The general found herself remembering her own early days in the service, when she too had spent quiet moments maintaining her gear and thinking about family. Those memories felt distant now, separated by decades of command decisions, deployments, and the weight of responsibility that came with rank. But seeing Sarah's careful attention to detail brought back echoes of that younger version of herself. A gentle breeze stirred across the training ground, causing Sarah's sleeve to shift slightly and providing General Williams with an even clearer view of the tattoo. There could be no doubt now. The symbol was exactly what she had thought, complete with the small details that made it unique and unmistakable to those who knew its significance. Sarah paused in her work to wipe perspiration from her forehead with the back of her hand. The morning was growing warmer, and the physical exertion of the early training combined with the precision work of cleaning her rifle had left her feeling slightly overheated. She glanced around the training ground, taking in the familiar sights and sounds of military life. The barracks loomed behind her, solid and practical buildings that housed dozens of soldiers like herself. The flagpole in the center of the compound flew the American flag, its red, white, and blue fabric moving gently in the morning breeze. In the distance, she could see other units beginning their daily training routines, the structured choreography of military life playing out across the landscape. General Williams knew she had to make a decision. She could simply walk away, file this observation in her memory, and continue with her rounds. Or she could approach Sarah and explore what might be an extraordinary coincidence. The professional part of her mind counseled caution, but something deeper was urging her forward. The morning sun climbed higher in the sky, its warmth beginning to chase away the coolness of dawn. Sarah reassembled her rifle with swift, sure movements, each component falling into place with the satisfying click of precision machinery. She had performed this routine hundreds of times, but she never took it for granted. As she finished her work and prepared to return the cleaned rifle to the armory, Sarah finally became aware that someone was watching her. She looked up to see General Williams standing a respectful distance away, observing with the intense focus that marked all truly dedicated military leaders. Sarah immediately straightened to attention, her heart rate quickening as she recognized the general approaching. She had never spoken directly with General Williams before, though she had seen her from a distance during formal ceremonies and inspections. The general had a reputation for being fair but demanding, someone who expected excellence from every soldier under her command. "At ease, soldier," General Williams said as she drew nearer, her voice carrying the authority that came from decades of military service. "I couldn't help but notice the care you take with your equipment. That's the mark of a professional." "Thank you, ma'am," Sarah replied, relaxing slightly but maintaining her respectful posture. She was still puzzled by the general's personal attention. Officers of that rank rarely took time to chat with enlisted personnel about routine maintenance. General Williams moved closer, seemingly casual but with purpose. "That's an interesting tattoo," she observed, nodding toward Sarah's forearm. "The design is quite unique. Does it have special meaning for you?" Sarah glanced down at her arm, surprised that anyone had noticed the small marking. Most people never paid attention to it, and she had grown accustomed to it being essentially invisible. "It's just something I got when I was younger, ma'am. A family symbol that my grandmother told me about." The words hit General Williams like a physical blow, confirming what she had suspected but hardly dared to believe. Her grandmother. This was no coincidence, no random encounter. The universe had somehow brought them together in this moment, on this ordinary morning, in ways that defied explanation. "Your grandmother," the general repeated slowly, her professional composure wavering slightly. "Can you tell me more about what she said about this symbol?" Sarah hesitated, unsure why a general would be interested in family stories from her childhood. But the earnestness in the older woman's voice convinced her to continue. "She used to tell me stories about our family's history, about relatives who fought for what they believed in. She said this symbol represented courage in the face of impossible odds, and that it had been passed down through our family for generations." General Williams felt her throat tighten with emotion she had not experienced in years. The story Sarah was telling matched exactly with memories from her own childhood, tales told by her own grandmother about family history and the significance of that particular emblem. "What was your grandmother's name?" the general asked, her voice carefully controlled despite the storm of emotions building inside her. Elena Vasquez, Sarah answered. She passed away when I was 15. She had immigrated here from Mexico when she was young, but she always maintained strong connections to our family's heritage and traditions. The name struck General Williams like lightning. Elena Vasquez. She had not heard that name spoken aloud in over 30 years, but she had never forgotten it. Elena had been her own grandmother's youngest sister, separated from the family during the chaos and upheaval of their youth. The family had lost touch decades ago, despite efforts to maintain connections across borders and generations. Elena Vasquez, the general repeated softly, as if testing the sound of the name. Tell me, did she ever mention having family members who had also served in the military? Sarah's eyes widened with surprise at the question. Actually, yes. She used to talk about a niece who had joined the American military and done very well for herself. She was always proud of that, even though they had lost touch years ago. She said this niece had risen to high rank and was someone the family should be proud of. The conversation was taking on a surreal quality for both women. What had begun as a routine morning was transforming into something that neither could have anticipated. General Williams found herself struggling to maintain her professional demeanor as the implications of this encounter became clear. Your grandmother, Elena, the general began carefully. Did she ever mention the name Patricia? Sarah's face showed complete shock. How did you know that? Yes, she talked about her niece Patricia all the time. She said Patricia had joined the military and become very successful, but the family had lost contact during some difficult times years ago. General Williams removed her cap and ran her hand through her graying hair, a gesture that revealed her own emotional state despite her attempts to remain composed. Sarah, I think we need to sit down and have a longer conversation. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound impossible, but I believe your grandmother Elena was my great-aunt. The rifle cleaning kit slipped from Sarah's nerveless fingers, scattering across the ground as she stared at the general in complete disbelief. That's impossible, she whispered. You're saying we're related. It appears that way, General Williams replied, her voice gentle now rather than commanding. The symbol on your arm, the stories about family courage, the name Elena Vasquez, they all match with my own family history. I've been looking for connections to that part of my family for decades. Sarah sank back down onto the bench, her mind reeling as she tried to process this revelation. The general she had admired from a distance, the commanding officer whose reputation for excellence was known throughout the entire base, was possibly her own relative. General Williams sat down beside her, temporarily setting aside the formal distance that typically separated officers from enlisted personnel. I know this is overwhelming. It's overwhelming for me too. I grew up hearing stories about Elena and wondering what had happened to that branch of our family. My grandmother talked about you, Sarah said slowly, pieces of childhood memories beginning to fall into place. She used to say that someday she hoped to reconnect with her niece Patricia to see what kind of woman she had become. She was so proud of your military service, even though she only knew bits and pieces about your career. The two women sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, each lost in their own thoughts and memories. Around them, the normal rhythm of military life continued, but their small corner of the training ground felt separate from the rest of the world. General Williams finally spoke again, her voice thick with emotion. Elena was very important to my grandmother. When the family was scattered, losing touch with her was one of the greatest regrets of my grandmother's life. She never stopped hoping that somehow the connection could be restored. Sarah looked down at the tattoo on her arm, seeing it now in an entirely new light. What had been simply a family keepsake had become a bridge across decades of separation, a symbol that had somehow brought two parts of a scattered family back together. What happens now? Sarah asked, uncertainty clear in her voice. I mean, with military protocol and everything. General Williams smiled for the first time since the conversation began. Now we figure out how to navigate this appropriately. But I want you to know that regardless of what we discover about our family connection, your service record speaks for itself. You've earned your place here through your own merit and dedication. The sun was now fully up, and other soldiers were beginning to move around the training ground with increasing frequency. Both women realized that their private moment would soon be interrupted by the demands of military life. Would you be willing to continue this conversation later? The general asked. Perhaps we could meet this evening after duty hours to share what we both know about our family history. Sarah nodded eagerly, still somewhat dazed by the morning's revelations. Yes, ma'am, I'd like that very much. As General Williams rose to leave, she paused and looked back at Sarah. Your grandmother would be very proud of the woman you've become. I can see her influence in the way you carry yourself, in your attention to detail, in your dedication to service. The words brought tears to Sarah's eyes. Alina had been such an important figure in her childhood, and knowing that this connection had somehow led her to a family member she never knew existed felt like a gift from beyond the grave. That evening, Sarah found herself walking toward General Williams' office with a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. She had spent the entire day trying to focus on her regular duties, while her mind kept returning to the morning's extraordinary conversation. The other soldiers in her unit had noticed her distracted state, but she had deflected their questions with vague comments about having a lot on her mind. The general's office was located in the administrative building, a more formal setting than their morning encounter on the training ground. Sarah knocked on the door precisely at the appointed time, her military training ensuring that she was neither early nor late. Come in, General Williams called from inside. Sarah entered to find the office transformed from its usual austere military appearance. The general had cleared her desk and arranged two comfortable chairs facing each other, with a small table between them holding what appeared to be photo albums and documents. Please sit down, the general said, gesturing to one of the chairs. I've spent the day gathering some materials that I think you'll find interesting. Sarah took her seat and noticed that General Williams looked different somehow. She still carried herself with military bearing, but there was a warmth in her expression that hadn't been visible during their formal interactions in the past. I want to start by showing you something, the general said, opening one of the photo albums. This is a picture of my grandmother, Maria Williams, when she was young. She's standing next to a woman I believe was your great-grandmother. Sarah leaned forward to examine the old black and white photograph. Two young women stood side by side, their arms linked in friendship. One of them had the same eyes that Sarah remembered from her grandmother Alina's face. My grandmother kept this picture her entire life, General Williams continued. She used to tell me stories about growing up with her sisters, about how close they all were before circumstances forced the family apart. The general turned the page to reveal more photographs, each one offering glimpses into a shared family history that had been lost for decades. Sarah found herself recognizing features and expressions that she had seen in her own family, connections that stretched across generations and geographical boundaries. Tell me about your decision to join the military, General Williams said as they continued looking through the photographs. What drew you to service? Sarah thought carefully before answering. My grandmother Alina used to tell me that our family had a tradition of standing up for what was right, even when it was difficult or dangerous. She said that sometimes the most important thing you could do was serve something larger than yourself. The words resonated deeply with General Williams, who had made similar choices decades earlier for many of the same reasons. Alina sounds like she was a remarkable woman. I wish I had been able to know her as an adult. She would have been so proud to know that we found each other, Sarah said. She never gave up hoping that the family connections could be restored somehow. She used to say that blood calls to blood, and that family bonds were stronger than distance or time. General Williams nodded, understanding the truth of those words in a way she never had before. I've been thinking about this all day, trying to understand how this happened. The odds of us both ending up here in this place at this moment in time seem impossible. Maybe it's not about odds, Sarah suggested. Maybe some things are just meant to happen. The general smiled at that observation. Throughout her military career, she had seen enough unexplained coincidences and unlikely connections to believe that sometimes the universe had its own plans that defied logical explanation. I've been researching our family history this afternoon, General Williams said, pulling out several documents. I found some records that help fill in the gaps in the story. After Alina and her sisters were separated, Alina married and moved to Texas, where she raised her family and maintained many of the old traditions. Sarah examined the documents with fascination. Birth certificates, immigration records, and marriage licenses helped paint a picture of a family scattered by circumstances, but never truly broken. Your path to the military seems to have been more direct than mine, General Williams observed. I actually started in college, planning to become a teacher, but something kept pulling me towards service, towards something that felt more meaningful than what I was doing. What changed your mind? Sarah asked. I kept thinking about the stories my grandmother told me about our family's history of service and sacrifice. I realized that I wanted to be part of that tradition, to honor what previous generations had done by contributing something meaningful myself. The conversation continued for hours as the two women shared stories, compared family memories, and began to piece together the complex history that connected them. They discovered that both had been influenced by strong female role models who had emphasized the importance of courage, integrity, and service to others. I want you to know, General Williams said as the evening grew late, that this discovery doesn't change anything about your military career. You've earned every achievement through your own merit and dedication. If anything, learning about our family connection makes me even more proud of what you've accomplished. Sarah felt a wave of relief at those words. She had been worried that their relationship might create complications or questions about favoritism that could damage her reputation among her fellow soldiers. However, the general continued, I do think this presents us with an opportunity. I've been looking for ways to establish mentorship programs that help promising soldiers develop their leadership potential. Would you be interested in participating in something like that? The offer was both exciting and daunting. Sarah had harbored ambitions of advancing in her military career, but she had never imagined having access to the kind of guidance and support that a general could provide. I would be honored, ma'am, she replied, but I want to make sure that I earn any opportunities that come my way. That's exactly the attitude that tells me you're ready for greater challenges, General Williams said with approval. Alina's influence on you is clear. She raised a woman who understands the importance of earning respect rather than expecting it. As their meeting drew to a close, both women felt that something profound had shifted in their lives. What had begun as a chance encounter had revealed connections that went far beyond military service, touching on themes of family, legacy, and the mysterious ways that lives can intersect across time and space. I'd like to stay in touch beyond just military matters, General Williams said as Sarah prepared to leave. I think we have a lot more to learn about our shared history, and I'd like to hear more about Alina's life and the stories she told you. Sarah smiled, feeling a warmth and connection that she had not expected when she woke up that morning. I'd like that too. I think my grandmother would be amazed to know that her stories about family courage led to this moment. As Sarah walked back to the barracks under the evening stars, she thought about the small tattoo on her arm that had started everything. What had been simply a keepsake from her grandmother had become the key that unlocked a family connection she never knew existed. The next morning, she would return to her regular duties, but everything would be different. She now carried with her not just her own dreams and ambitions, but also the knowledge that she was part of a larger story of service and sacrifice that stretched back through generations. The rifle she cleaned so carefully each day was no longer just a tool of her profession, but also a symbol of the tradition of service that connected her to family members she was only beginning to discover. And somewhere, she felt certain, her grandmother Alina was smiling with the knowledge that her hopes for family reunification had been fulfilled in ways she never could have imagined.